Good morning. My name is Leon Andrew. I live in Norman Wells, but I was born and raised in Toledo, in particularly the west side of Toledo, Mackenzie River, in among the mountains. Many trails I have traveled in this area. Sucker Creek has been the major focus for the mountain Dene people beginning at time. The Sucker Creek area is rich in fish, grayling, sucker, I guess that's why it's called Sucker Creek, and there's a lot of bird fowl there too. And occasionally you go into the lake, there's a lot of moose, etc., etc. So people can survive if you're a hunter. According to what we talk about, Nunip and ourselves in the mountain, those are places where meant to be for wildlife, the habitat. So Norman Wells is something like that, like the grayling. That's their place to go. Their birthing place, let's put it that way. And so some of the geese too, they come by, stop there, because there's food for them.
On August 23, 1920, an Imperial Oil crew struck oil at Discovery Well No. 1. The well was located across the river and just downstream of Sucker Creek. The following year, Imperial built a small oil refinery there. More than 100 years later, Imperial Oil continues to extract oil and natural gas from the ground beneath Norman Wells.
People, I like the way they say, land of the caribou, land of the moose, or wetland for the bird, and fish migration route. I like the way they describe it. They don't say it belong to me, they say it belong to the wildlife, the land. So there's a lot of concern out there. So when we talk about how development occur and so on, I think people should take into account what happened to the wildlife. What about them? Because that's what our people will eventually survive on, So that's where our people's mind is, I believe. So that's what we're about, the Petroleum History Project.
The Petroleum Histories Project was initiated by Tłegło Nakedi, the Sahtu Renewable Resources Board, and the Norman Wells, Tulita, and Fort Good Hope Tłegło, the Renewable Resources Councils, in 2021. Together, community members and collaborators are working to document the historical and ongoing impacts of Imperial Oil's operations at Norman Wells on the land, water, fish, animals, people, and Dene and Métis Tsili, our ways of life.
If you backtrack, you can just imagine things that have been 100 years. There's a lot of machinery move over the land since that time. The different species into the world, different plants coming into the land through vehicle tracks, and different chemicals being brought into the land that have been used for productions. Those are all concerned.
The Petroleum Histories Project is preserving Dene and Métis stories and knowledge so future generations know how petroleum extraction at Norman Wells has affected the land and people of the Sahtu. The idea for this project came through a series of virtual study circles about Sahtu history. Study circles continue to bring together community members and collaborators on Zoom to generate and share knowledge. Over the last 3 years, the Petroleum Histories Project has hosted 18 study circles on topics like Treaty 11, the Canal Project, the artificial islands, and closure and reclamation of the Norman Wells operations.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Yakulaya. I'm from Kalita. My homeland is Willow Lake. On the map, it's called Bracket Lake. I've been working for the SRB since 2022. I started off as a research intern, and now I've got promoted to research coordinator. You know, working on this petroleum history project, I'm able to listen to all these extraordinary stories that had happened in the past due to oil industry, mining industry, or just any other industries that grew up on the land. Listening to the oil industry stories, listening to the construction stories that have happened in our area is really, it's really sad. You know, listening to people that had to be moved away because there was some either oil, mineral, or something unique in that area of their campsite. You know, they had to be moved away. You know, I would hate for an industry to come and tell me I have to move because they want something in that area.
In addition to providing a space for sharing stories and knowledge, study circles are an important tool for ensuring the research project is meeting community objectives, answering community questions, and reviewing communications materials. The project team has gathered materials related to the history and impacts of Imperial Oil's operations at Norman Wells at archives in Ottawa, Calgary, Washington, and Yellowknife. Most of these records tell us about the actions and motivations of Imperial Oil and the federal and territorial governments. However, archival research has also uncovered photographs and recordings of Saulteaux, Dene, and Métis, like this interview with the late Cease Macaulay Hodgson, that is part of the Norman Wells Museum's archive.
We lived in Bluefish Creek all the time, and
What was at Bluefish Creek?
Dad used to trap it. That's the first Norman Wells, so you have some pictures of the derrick there.
Yes.
It's the one in some of our little brothers and sisters didn't get killed there. I mean, we used to play around that big derrick, water and oil. And I think the cabin we lived in would belong to Imperial Oil, one of their old cabins.
Mm-hmm.
Stories like Cease's bring this history alive and help us to better understand how Imperial's operations at Norman Wells have shaped the lives and lands of Saulteaux, Dene, and Métis. Recording interviews with living elders is also an important part of this project. Oral histories, along with study circles and archival research, are helping to identify sites of concern. Nek'edike, which means keepers of the land, are then visiting these sites to gather information using both Indigenous and Western science methods.
In 2022, we started doing wildlife track survey for the Petroleum History Project. We would survey from Norman Wells to Toledo on the pipeline. While we're doing the tracking, the only animals that we would track are moose, caribou, muskox, wolf, lynx, pretty much all the big game. I have done the wildlife track survey on the pipeline in the past, but just going back last year and doing the wildlife track survey again, I was able to see the rising and the falling of each wildlife. I noticed there was a little bit more lynx and more rabbit.
The Guardians are also using cameras and audio recording units to gather information about wildlife along the Saulteaux portion of the pipeline. In August 2022, members of the project team visited sites of concern identified by community members around Norman Wells and Deocha, or Bennett Field. Led by local knowledge holders, team members observed these sites and recorded stories.
You know, just being, I guess what you say, the eyes and ears or the boots on the ground person here in Toledo is really amazing because, you know, now I can tell my own story of how I'm able to see the changes of the landscapes and not only see the changes, but to see the harvested areas being affected.
The Petroleum Histories Project is gathering and preserving stories and knowledge about the history and impacts of Imperial's operations. It is also strengthening present and future Indigenous roles in monitoring, stewardship, and decision-making. Initially, this project was intended to support Sahtu, Dene, and Métis participation in closure and reclamation of the Norman Wells oil field. As Imperial is now planning to continue operations beyond 2024, the project team is also supporting community participation in regulatory processes, including the renewal of Imperial's operations authorization and water license.
For me, we know here we have a land claim, and we have a different boards. There's different boards that need information so they can decide what to make of every development that occurs or potential development to occur. Yes, they need information to make decisions. So I think the government, when they say we may want to work with people, that's good. If you want to do that, come and visit us. We'll help you. We'll tell you a story about land so you can decide based on what we say, what we document.
I've always been passionate about our history. I've always loved listening to it, and I always love hearing about it and seeing it. Thinking about the past, it opens your heart. It makes you realize that, we've made it this far. We survived. We were able to still hunt. We're able to still trap. We're able to still provide off the land. But I don't know how it will look in the future if we still continue to do the things that industry and mining and oil, or basically industry, are doing. If they are still going to continue doing what they're doing to our land, and where are we going to go? We need to continue monitoring these wildlife. The way we have always been monitoring them is either by harvesting or by traveling. We need to monitor them so that we have an idea of what the future would look like. As long as we are doing our part, and as long as we are doing our job to monitor them, I believe that we are going to have a good future.